Okay, so let's turn to domestic politics here because we're inching ever closer to a potential debt default. You'll recall when Kevin McCarthy was elected speaker, he made all kinds of deals with this sort of rump faction of dissenters. Some of them had to deal with dramatic spending cuts that they wanted, and he committed to using the debt ceiling as sort of like a hostage-taking tool in order to force through some of these spending cuts. The White House has stood adamantly opposed to any of this, saying they will only accept a clean debt ceiling hike. And it sort of had been quiet for a little while about what exactly was going on behind the scenes. Well, Kevin McCarthy is making his big move this week. Yesterday, he gave a speech at the New York Stock Exchange, in part because last time there was a debt ceiling showdown. The stock market tanked because our credit rating was downgraded and was kind of a disaster. So he's basically going and begging Wall Street to not like crater and to be somewhat on his side and understand his point of view. So he laid out some of the kind of high-level outline of what a deal within the Republican caucus might look like. Take a listen to how he presented things to Wall Street.
Without exaggeration, American debt is a ticking time bomb that will detonate unless we take serious, responsible action. Okay, so here's our plan. In the coming weeks, the House will vote on a bill to lift the debt ceiling into the next year. Save taxpayers trillions of dollars, make us less dependent upon China, curb our high inflation, all without touching Social Security and Medicare.
All without touching Social Security and Medicare. I mean, that was sort of forced on them by Trump and then by Joe Biden at the State of the Union. So interesting that that's in there. But you'll note not a lot of details fleshed out. And this is part of the problem for the Republicans is they have this bare 4-person majority in the House. So forget about tangling with the Democrats. They haven't even figured out what their own caucus will support, because you have, a pretty wide ideological variation between the most conservative and the most liberal of the Republicans. You have to recall, part of how they were able to achieve this majority was by winning some Joe Biden seats in New York State in particular, which is where some of the sticking points are going to be here, because those people, in order to get reelected, really want to signal their moderation, that they're different than the rest of the Republicans, they're not so hard line. So to get them on board with something that's fairly draconian is going to be very difficult. On the other hand, you have people in the caucus who are saying, I'm not going to vote for a debt ceiling hike at all. Yes. So he's in a very, difficult situation just to try to bring his own caucus together.
This gets back to the entire speaker fight. This man should not be the speaker. He doesn't actually have credibility with all of the parties who are involved. Here's the truth. The vast majority of the Republicans are just going to vote whichever way. They don't really care. There are only 2 factions that really matter. As he said, the Joe Biden, precarious Republicans who are in swing seats, and then the hardline Freedom Caucus. If I'm the White House, McCarthy is irrelevant. He can come and represent that middle faction, but if I'm Joe Biden, you're going to call in one of the people from the swing seat who speaks for them. You're going to call in McCarthy, and then you got to call in Jim Jordan or some other chairman of the House Freedom Caucus and just say, like, all right, guys, mostly you start with Jim. You're like, Jim, what's the best thing that you can possibly live with? He goes, okay, here's what I got. Here are the votes. He goes, can you sign on to that? No. All right, you 2 negotiate. And then McCarthy, you're just going to have to vote for whatever. That's why his speakership is a joke. Like, fundamentally, he has no authority. He's coming before the New York Stock Exchange and says, we can pass, he's making all these promises. You don't have the authority to deliver on those promises. And the Freedom Caucus people, they know it. Go ahead and put this up there on the screen from Axios, which describes exactly, he's like, my plan to vote to raise a debt ceiling. These are all words. As you said, Krystal, there's actually a behind-the-scenes effort right now to try and come up with some sort of budget talk that they can release. They have nothing. The internal scuttlebutt here in Washington was that McCarthy yesterday was supposed to deliver a budget. You know why I didn't? Couldn't agree on one.
Can't agree.
They agree on nothing. So I don't know. I look at all this. McCarthy, it's like we're all playing this game where just because he's the speaker in name that we're supposed to believe he's in charge. Like, I really don't think he's in charge. I think the Freedom Caucus really is the one who are in charge. I think they would, quote unquote, shoot the hostage. I don't know if the other people would. There's only a couple of ways that this ends. Most likely, it looks to me, sequestration, like something like that. No, I don't think there can be a grand bargain, to use the Obama type thing. I don't think Biden would be a fool to necessarily agree with it. And ultimately, it will come down to some like hostage standoff. And sequestration just looks like the most likely one.
I don't know how it's going to be resolved because, I mean, it seems like the White House, well, first of all, they're happy to watch the Republicans twist in the wind. This is a problem of the Republican caucus's own making. Right. And McCarthy is basically trying to bluff here, trying to pretend like his caucus is unified behind one proposal, but it's so obvious that is not reality. When, I scoured all the reporting about his supposed plan and read his speech and, read the Washington Post reporting, the Axios reporting, whatever. There are no details here, no details. And that's the only way that he has been able to keep his caucus from having some sort of a total revolt, either on the right-wing side or on the moderate side, or potentially on both sides, by basically saying nothing about what will actually be inside of this deal. So the White House is calling his bluff. They're saying, no, you tell us what your proposal is, and then we can talk. That has been their position the whole time. It's like, you don't even have a proposal to bring us. So you're saying, oh, we got to negotiate. Like, negotiate against what? You don't even have something that you're specifically suggesting here. Not to mention, the White House has also been very hardline about, like, no, we appropriated this money. The time for debate about what we're going to spend and what we're going to cut and what our priorities are was when we were passing those spending bills. Not now, when we're just trying to maintain the full faith and credit of the United States and not have some complete meltdown at a time when the economy is incredibly precarious. So that's their position, and I don't think that McCarthy's bluff here, going to Wall Street and begging the traders to back him, really worked out. Put this next piece up on the screen. It gives you a little bit of a sense of where some of the sticking points could be. This is the White House's response. They say, as President Biden continues to fight against inflation, MAGA Republicans in Congress are trying to take our economy hostage unless we got programs that lower costs for hardworking Americans. So you can see they are certainly sticking to their guns. Put the Politico piece, though, up on the screen. This just gives you a sense of one of the many fights that are going to unfold within the Republican caucus. So one of the specific things that McCarthy is looking at is cutting the food stamp program, expanding the age bracket for people who have to meet work requirements, closing what Republicans say are, quote, loopholes in existing restrictions, but basically cutting SNAP and the number of people who will benefit from the program. Now, you might think, because there are a lot of Republicans who are on board with cutting that program, that might be something that's less controversial. It's actually not true. There's already key defections, in particular among that group in New York State, that represents more swing or moderate districts where they're very, they don't like this proposal. They're very worried about what it would do to people in their districts who have already seen, all the additional pandemic aid cut off, already struggling with inflation, already struggling to afford food. And they're saying, okay, at a time when we have high grocery prices, you're going to cut off this bit of aid that they're ultimately getting. So even this program, which you might think would be uncontroversial within the Republican caucus, even this cut is controversial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is where it just comes down to the details and just why. Look, the Freedom Caucus and them want cuts to Medicare and Social Security. They don't agree, Krystal, with what the Republican leader is saying.
Yeah,
but then the other ones don't want it. So there are a couple of ways, as I said, it could lay out. Sequestration, in my opinion, is the most likely. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically an across-the-board haircut to the entire federal budget. That's what happened during the Obama years, because once you start negotiating to cut from one thing and the other one, well, then everybody says that you're, playing favorites. The easiest way is just cut across the board. The other way, which would make McCarthy look like a fool, is if he basically just brought it to the floor and let the Democrats come and save him to vote for a budget, which was more moderate. But that also would negate any power that McCarthy really had. And don't forget about the motion to vacate, which allows any member of the House of Representatives. It'd be the end of his speakership. It would be the end of his speakership. Yeah. So, would he be willing to sacrifice his speakership for the global economy? They are enough narcissists. They definitely would rather save their speakership than actually do what would be best for all of us. So, I don't know. I'm looking at all of this. We've got 7 weeks to go. I guess they could mint the coin, but apparently they've already ruled that out. And there are legal challenges with minting the coin as well. Good luck. That's all.
There are some other potential loophole workarounds. One is this legal theory that since Congress is basically sending the president two separate sets of instructions, one that's like spend this money and the other that's like don't spend this money, that they basically, it's sort of like a jump ball, and the White House can basically choose which of those directives to follow. That's one legal theory of the case. Mint the coin is another legal theory of the case. There were a couple other ideas floating out there of like loopholes to get around this whole debt ceiling nonsense, which shouldn't exist and like is a weird relic to start with and is only now used for hostage-taking tactics for the Republican Party to force through things that they can't achieve with their majorities or their lack thereof. But I really don't know how this resolves. I'm not sure as confident it ends in sequestration as you are. I have a feeling the Biden White House is actually going to take a harder line on that than the Obama-Biden White House
would be really crazy
did.
Yeah.
And I genuinely don't know how this is going to get resolved, but I guess we're all just going to wait and find out.
It'll be fun, I guess.
It'll be interesting.
Here's the #1 rule, everyone. Don't sell when the market tanks. You should buy more. But that's not financial advice. I'm just saying, though, objectively, that's how it worked out for people in 2008.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.